Welcome to the Catherine Vandome and Me podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Catherine Vandome and Me podcast. And today I am joined by the incredibly talented director and producer, Mr. Stephen Pettinger. We had a wonderful connection. We were on stage together as in childhood. And Stephen is not just a very talented actor and singer. He's now over in America, in Florida, producing and directing. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce this inspirational guest today. Hello, Stephen. How are you today?
I'm very well, Cathy. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How's the weather over there?
Actually, it's a little bit cloudy today. It's just starting to get really warm. So I think we hit 90 yesterday.
Okay.
So the hot weather's coming, but it's a little bit cloudy today, which is not unusual. But anyway.
Oh, and how are you doing? How are you, Stephen?
I'm good. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm excited to be a guest and talk to you, and I'm happy to see you getting this all going, taking flight. It's exciting.
Well, you are my very first, I have to say, today, my first guest, and it's
No pressure
on either side, and it's so good to see you doing so well as well, Stephen.
So we met in a local drama group many years ago.
We certainly did.
Joseph in his Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I think I had my eyes on the part of Joseph, and then somebody came along and snatched it from me. So we met, and you were the lead role of Joseph, and I was the narrator, I think. Yeah, the narrator, and that's how we originally met, and that was a wonderful production.
You were fantastic. You were fantastic, Stephen. If I'd known you wanted it, it could have been yours. Absolutely. You are so gifted, and you stole the show. You really did. So
did that.
You did.
There was no show from you.
You did. And not just that, we laughed, didn't we? That's our connection. Our childhood, and we did lots of shows, didn't we? Different shows together at the Charter Theatre as well.
We did. Yeah, we met many happy days, a wonderful childhood, really, in terms of just having a project to work on, and a focus and pulling together, and the camaraderie and the team, the sort of bonds and the team that you build is just so exciting. And I think that's why I've enjoyed a career in television, because it's kind of carried on the same. Instead of the stage play, it's been a television production, and it's the same thing. You meet a team, a crew, and you all get on board and you all work together to produce this final project. And there's nothing quite like the high of that, is there?
Absolutely. Would you say you, like me, chase adrenaline? Do you like that sort of feeling? Were you into exercising, and obviously the stage is full of adrenaline? Would you say that you were? I'm definitely an adrenaline junkie, or I certainly was. Would you say that you had like high levels of exercise and moving around and lots of things on the go? We were quite active children, weren't we?
Oh yeah. No, I would definitely say until I was hit with chronic illness, I was definitely that individual. And then in my 30s, when I was hit, which we'll obviously talk about, then things changed for me. I don't think I was ever chasing an adrenaline high. And you don't really actually. What is different about the theatre and television is you don't really get that end high that you do with theatre, because if you think about it, people are watching it on television. You're not with a big audience watching it, and so you'll get reaction, but it's not that moment of when you're on the stage and you're all about to go on. And television it's similar in terms of the build, but the actual final product and the big high isn't there the same way as it is with the theatre, I don't think.
So
I don't think I do.
Oh, but
Yeah.
but what in that transition time, what do you think led you? Because as I say, I need everybody to hear you are very talented, and you can't that can never leave you. So no matter what you've been through in terms of your illness, your talent is there and was evident, and you were always selected in your auditions for all these different productions that we did, and your laughter, like I said, resonated and filled the auditorium backstage, and the corpsing, etc., was just
Naughty.
inevitable.
Naughty.
Naughty, you were naughty, and that's why I loved you and still do, and that's who you are. But you
Still am.
and that never changes. But what was the transition, Stephen, for you in terms of performing live, as you say, into directing and producing? Was that a second love, or was it something that you felt, I don't want to continue with the acting world? I mean, I don't know anything about it. Did you jump into acting and have a go at that professionally first, or no, it was only in childhood?
No.
Because you could sing as well. That's the other thing. You've got an amazing singing voice.
Well, thank you, Cathy. And so have you.
I really, this is you. This is you, Stephen. You honestly, really,
It's
truly
so
have.
interesting. So interesting. It's just like a chapter of my life. And it's so interesting that we're talking about this. Anyway, so uh, I ended up, I guess it was probably self-doubt that I mean, I love the theatre, I love production. I probably think it was probably self-doubt at that age, that I could make a living doing that. And so anyway, I ended up in television. I ended up working for the BBC, and I kind of found my way into a creative field that 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 suited me. I don't have, interestingly, I don't have some big need to be like front and center, or to have been on television. The BBC did actually screen test me, interestingly, and I was awful. I'll show you some of the tape. I really was not good. I just didn't work on television, but I wasn't particularly bothered about being on television. And I really enjoyed the kind of academic producing construction of shows. So I started at the BBC on, do you remember Anne Robinson's Watchdog?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was my
What year was that,
first
Stephen?
gig. Wow, that would have been 98, 99.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, because I'd studied law, and so, I had that legal background. And then I ended up, there working. And so it all came together. But no, I hadn't even really thought, I didn't watch a lot of TV. We were too busy, weren't we, as kids?
Yeah.
We were like always on the go. I didn't have time to watch television. And so it wasn't something I'd really thought about, but life just kind of took me there. And then I found I liked it. I found I was good at it. And so that's how I found my way into television.
That's fantastic. So what was your job on this particular show for the BBC? What was your actual job title, Stephen?
A researcher. I started researching. Yeah, a lot of the
Fantastic.
graduates were researchers. Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's gone now. It's gone now. It doesn't. I mean, when you were a BBC researcher, it was a tough job. I mean, to make that leap. So they used to take a lot of graduates and then take them on as researchers, and then the next step would be an assistant producer, and then it was a producer. So you're on the ladder that way.
Brilliant. Because I was thinking if anybody was wanting to start off, but is it different today? Is it a bit different
I think
today?
it's all really changed.
Has it?
Yeah, I think it's very much changed. I mean, the BBC isn't anything like as big as it was when I was there. I mean, and you think about their individual productions, a lot was made in-house at the BBC 20 years ago.
Okay.
But what's happened is a lot of their programming is made by small production companies. So they'll get the commission, and then they'll subcontract essentially to a small production company, and they'll make the shows. So that's why the BBC, I mean, Television Centre's not even there anymore.
Of course.
Where we would, that's now a Grand Hotel, which I went to go look around a few years ago, which was very strange.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, those big studios aren't there anymore. It's all gone.
So you basically did your law degree and at 21 moved to London, is that right?
No, I moved at 18 to London, went to
Oh,
university. So I left.
18.
Yeah. I was 18, so I left home at 18. Yeah.
And can I ask, where did you study law?
I studied at Inns Court School. I went to London University, and then I went to Inns Court School of Law because I actually trained to be a barrister. So there was only one school back then you could go to.
Right, okay. And how was
Yeah.
that study? Did you through that process think this isn't for me, or because a lot of actors are barristers and politicians, I think.
Yeah. Oh no. Exactly. No.
It's all a performance.
It is all a performance. Actually, being at the bar, you spend a lot of time alone, which I don't mind. But I think I craved something more dynamic. And I think in television, I found that perfect. I found that perfect place because at the BBC, you know, I was doing high power shows. I went on to Crime Watch. You know, it wasn't just light entertainment I was doing. You know, it was journalism.
Yeah.
But also you had the creative aspect of making a film. So really, I found myself in the right spot where, you know, there was some academic rigor there, but you also had the creative side. So somehow I found my way there.
You've done extremely well, and I think
I've fallen into it all.
well, we all say that, we just fell into it, but the truth is
Yeah.
it takes a hell of a lot of hard work, Stephen, and you often don't credit yourself enough for that. You were always highly intelligent, top sets, very highly academic, as well as able to sing, dance and perform the way that you could, and obviously, you know, to then, you know, transcend into producing and directing as well. I just think you worked extremely hard, and we don't often give ourselves that credit.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is a guest I have coming up. He was actually, I think, in the back of a car in Crime Watch. He's in musical theatre. Yeah, so whether he's a friend of probably yours as well, called Dermot Canavan. So I'll be interviewing him soon, from Preston he is. And yeah, he went on to do West End productions and he's done very well. But I do know he was on Crime Watch in the back of a car, and I just wondered, did you ever think to yourself, oh my goodness, I'd love to be either a criminal or something on this production? And was any of the criminals, did anybody of them look like you so that you could play that role? Because that's something I would have loved.
Interesting. That's interesting. It was a fantastic show to work on, was Crime Watch. So I actually started. Do you remember Jill Dando was murdered?
Oh yeah.
Remember back in the day, yeah. And so I was on Watchdog then, and then I started on the show when Fiona Bruce took over.
Oh right, wow.
Yeah, with the amazing Nick Ross, who was a fantastic guy to learn from. Such a kind man with his time, and really wanted you to learn. And I've got a lot of respect for Nick Ross, and Fiona was wonderful too. And so I enjoyed doing that show. Yeah, but it was interesting doing the Crime Watch reconstructions and working with the actors and how long it takes. That's another thing. I knew being on Crime Watch that I didn't want to go in down the drama and direct drama. It just takes too much time for me.
Okay.
Doing the same scene again and again for hours. Factual television is much faster, more run and gone, whereas theatre, whereas television drama, it needs to be exactly right, and you rehearse it again and again and again. And I guess I'm a bit too ADHD for that. So I found myself in the right area of television, but worked with some wonderful actors. Really,
brilliant.
Yeah, back in the day, yeah, these struggling young London actors, really, who you know, we would give them regular work. But yeah, that really did, watching them suffer for their art made me realize as well that I'd made the right decision.
Yeah, because it's not what we often think. That's it. Yeah, it's not what we often think. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, starts in the rain or whatever, and yeah, you're saying you preferred to watch them and basically, you know, do the intelligent side. You know, and I joke because I'm talking about myself as well, but the point is to do the bit where you put it all together and then you've got the technological side. So did you have to train in technology as well, Stephen? So you've got your law, you've got your singing,
Yes.
you've got you could dance as well. You really were a triple threat on that stage. And
I definitely couldn't dance.
oh,
I
you could,
definitely.
because
So
I think I had to
your
roll over your
memories,
back.
no, your memories, your memories definitely. I'll say okay. I could sing-ish. I could okay. My actually, but when you go into the dance, I'm like, no, I can't say I can. I
But we
was
did do. They were musicals, weren't they? So it was a
you
bit
could
of
dance.
everything.
You could dance, but I
Just
couldn't.
in case
Um,
Strictly wants to meet you.
oh yeah, just in case I am not ready, and nor would I ever go on it. Anyway,
But
so yeah, so the BBC was great in terms
yeah,
of. I don't know about now, but back in the day, they almost preferred you not to have any kind of television background or training. They really wanted to. They liked a nice. They liked a nice degree, and then they would take it from there, from from
wow.
the degree sort of, and there were tons of training courses up at Elstree, where
Oh
they
yeah,
sheet extenders, and so we go up to Elstree and spend a few days, like the director's course or the researcher's course or the producer's course, and it would be 2 or 3 days, and then they would, rigorously train you. But what my favorite thing was about the whole thing was because EastEnders was filmed up there. You'll be in the canteen and you're like behind Pat Butcher, or
okay, yeah.
all the cast of EastEnders were there at the canteen at lunchtime. That was my favorite part about it.
Oh,
I
fantastic.
think I said hi to Pauline. Do you remember what was that? She was
Oh
great.
yeah, yes,
Remember Pauline
yes,
Fowler,
yes.
Andy
Okay.
Rich.
Did you ever feel like sneaking into any scenes, or did you have any crossover with them at all, or was it just the production was two separate entities?
Oh, EastEnders were their own beast up
Okay.
there. I mean,
Yeah.
they were Elstree Studios, still are.
Yeah.
And then there was the whole sort of BBC schooling around them, but they were their own. They were their own deal.
And then from there, Stephen, so
Mm,
what was the next step for you? What happened next, and how old would you be now?
mm.
Just so the
I was
viewers
in
got.
my 20s.
Okay.
So
So
then
you're soaring away in your 20s, everything's going swimmingly, and
yeah,
yeah.
and then I came to America.
So how old were
The
you, Stephen, when
BBC,
you came?
like 28, I think.
28.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 28. And then the BBC wanted to make a docu-series
Okay.
in America about British people starting new lives over here. So I ended up they sent me over here, and so I was here for a year, and then they said, okay, you got to come back to the BBC. And I said, I don't want to. I said, could I take a year out? I enjoyed it here. And they said, okay, we'll give you a year out. And then a year went by, and then they asked me to go back, and then I didn't want to go back, and I ended up working freelance here in the US, and just my television. I just managed to start getting jobs here, and I kept thinking, oh, I'll go back next year. Oh, I'll go back next year, and then I just did different shows over here.
That's fantastic. So but what, can you tell the viewer where you are? Are you allowed to say that? You're in Florida, is that right?
Yeah, but I've been in New York since. So I was in New York till the pandemic. Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah. There's no television production down here. I lived here as well, and then in the pandemic, New York ground to a halt. I had a house
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
so I just left New York, and then I came down here, and then I'm just at a point now where my health is my priority, and New York's a very fast city, a wonderful place, but
yeah.
I've kind of gone through that phase of my life. So I'm now based totally down here, but yeah, there's not much going on down here in terms of television production, unfortunately.
But it's one of the most exciting places, I think. Certainly,
America,
yeah, and certainly Florida. I don't know. Um,
is it?
to me,
I don't know whether it is.
to me, all
Like,
seems very happy and
I'm
exciting.
not sure if Florida's that exciting. It's a bit crazy, but I enjoy it.
At least you got the hot weather. You certainly don't get that
Oh
in
yes.
Preston. Yes,
Oh yes, you certainly
yeah.
don't. Yeah, yeah. No,
So
it's definitely different.
So basically, you obviously moved to New York then. So if we can
Right.
allow the viewer now to sort of go into another sort of dimension of, you know, your journey. So you moved to New York, and did you say then, first of all, what can you share with us what you were doing television wise and producing wise then? Is there any particular shows that you produced at that particular time in the US?
Yeah. So I ended up working. I did a bunch of different projects, directing just a few weeks here, a few weeks there, whatever I could get really.
Yeah.
And then I ended up. I ended up found the RDF Media, who are a London company. They were producing Wife Swap in the USA. Do you remember the show Wife Swap on Channel
Oh
4?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they were producing the American version. So I think they were looking for directors, producers with a knowledge of the UK show, which I thought was fantastic format
Yeah.
wise and very well produced. And so I ended up working. I ended up getting a job with RDF and working for them, and then I ended up executive. I worked my way up, and I ended up co-executive producing Wife Swap for a few years, which was fun.
Wow. Wow. And can you tell
Mm.
us a little bit more about that? Is there any fun stories,
Where,
connections, or
where do you want to start? So it was, yeah, no, that was it. It was a very interesting show. It was very challenging. It was very souped up in the US. It was very dramatic.
okay, more
The American
dramatic?
television's, oh, it's much more dramatic than UK television. It's actually very demanding to make. You know, a lot of English producers can be a bit sniffy about American television. And actually, American television, I think, in many ways, is harder to make. It has to deliver. It's much more
Yeah.
cutthroat.
Yeah.
It has to. There has to be drama. There has to be stakes. There has to be, and it's edited in a very sort of fast, flashy fashion. And so, to actually make television over here it's tough,
Yeah.
and it was a steep learning curve being on that show. It was on ABC, which is the equivalent of the BBC over here. I mean, it was a big network with big audiences, and I learned an awful lot on that show. And it was amazing, and I really do believe in the concept of Y swap, which was taking two people from different lives, they swap, and then they get together and they
Yeah.
talk. That's how we grow as human beings. That's experience. That's why we talk about travel broadens the mind. Travel broadens the mind because you meet people that you wouldn't ordinarily meet. And I
Yes.
think when
Yeah.
when we do that, we come to some kind of understanding.
Yeah.
We come to some kind of shift. I don't think people shift emotionally, um, prejudice wise, or their views on things by reading particularly. I think they shift through drama.
Yeah.
They'll watch a play about a certain topic that they've never thought about, or a movie, and that will shift them emotionally. They're able to empathize with the character, and also through through meeting people that you wouldn't ordinarily meet in everyday life, and connecting with them and thinking differently about those people. And that's really what Wife Swap was all about.
Well, that's fantastic. And you will have brought, I'm sure, a heck of a lot of attributes to the production team. And did you make some good friends within that team?
Oh,
Because in America they work you hard. That's something that not everybody understands. You work very, very hard in the UK, but in America, in order to prelude perhaps, you know, what we're going to move on to, you really are worked hard, and it is sometimes all work and no play, perhaps. Would I be right in that?
yeah. Americans in general live to work. That's
Okay.
why they've got such a successful economy. That's why the country has grown the way it has. And it really all goes back to immigration. That America was founded with new people coming into the country, and that was their chance in life. That was their chance
Yeah.
to rewrite whatever life that they'd had. And the irony is there's so much antipathy, especially at the moment. There's so many problems around the area of immigration in America as in the UK. But the thing is that the country essentially has grown and thrived on that
Yes.
entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
People coming, they've got a new chance in life, and by and large have worked very hard. And I think that it's really changing now, and the Americans are losing sight of this a little bit. Anyway, people work very hard still in America. They don't have the same social safety net that you guys do in the UK. You know, if you get sick here, I mean, it's very,
You've got
very
support, and you don't have that over there.
no. You
Not
want
at
to,
all.
you can really afford. No, I mean, it just
Oh,
there are programs, but it's not like it is over there. And so, yeah, and a lot of the time, your health care is connected to your job. So if you lose your job, you lose your health care. I mean, the
oh.
irony.
Right. So you really moving into that. I mean, is there anything else about your career or experiences before we move on to the next section? Is there anything else you want to share? Any connections? Any fun stories? I know you've made quite a few podcast connections. I think I saw you recently on a podcast. Which I can't remember the name of the lady that did that particular podcast.
Shanti Owen, the supermodel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's give her a mention. Who is she?
Well, so a little bit about what I'm doing now, I guess, is what you're asking. Is so after many years of independently show running different shows, I've now come to a point where I don't really want to run any more shows, and I've done that. So I'm developing now. I'm working on a ton of different ideas with a company in Colorado. So it's less taxing on the body. I love to come up with things. Um, and one of the streams of our business as well is we produce podcasts and YouTube channels. We're just starting. It's very, very early days.
Yeah.
As part of our a part of the services we provide, because we find that there are people, or have found that there are tons of people out there who are thinking about doing this, like yourself, but it's like, where do they go? They don't understand how to do things, and we really believe in people's stories and storytelling. So this is a very small part of our business, but we've a few YouTubers and podcasters now, so we run their channels for them, which is fun.
Wow. Well, that sounds very good. Yeah.
In our spare time.
Yeah, which is quite minimal if you're in where you are, but that's amazing. So we need to jump back a little bit then, if you're happy to do so.
Okay.
So you had an active childhood. Am I right that you were horse riding and things? Is that you? Was there physical activities that you did that were, more extreme than the average person, if that makes sense? Yeah, share that a little.
Family, my grandparents and my great grandparents were all farmers.
Yeah.
So I was I've got horses in the blood. And in fact, you talked about the acting and whether I thought about doing that as a profession. Really, the thing that I really thought about was becoming a professional in the horse world in some way.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
When I was around, I was thinking, do I go to agricultural college or do I go to university? And that was the real crossroads for me, seriously, that I really thought about. But really, to be a profession, I took advice from someone who I respect very much, and it's like, unfortunately, the reality of the horse world is you've got fantastic amounts of money and you can be the competitor and you can just about make a living, or you'll end up the groom. And which do you want? And I thought, I don't want to be the groom.
You were too tall to be the jockey. Is that what you mean? That's something that perhaps I could do. But no, that's something I didn't know about you, Stephen. So thanks for sharing that as well.
Yeah.
And obviously,
a busy child.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Because we were doing sometimes, if I look back, about 7 shows a year, how we fit education in. And we also worked at Barton Grange together, which was the hotel.
We did. Oh
and we
no,
did
Broughton
Broughton
Park.
Park. Yeah, that was it. Because I think I
First job.
That's
Our
it.
first
I
job
think I
done with this.
started at Barton Grange, and then my best friend Louisa Cornell at the time, she then suggested coming to Broughton Park, which was just amazing. And we laughed as we tried to silver serve wedding parties, etc. And again, you were just amazing there. You kept the fun of it behind the scenes.
I don't know how I kept that job. I really don't.
You were naughty but nice, which is what you are. You are just incredible and so admired. And I don't say that lightly. You really are absolutely admired by everyone who meets you, because you're always upbeat and positive and fun, and those are huge attributes, Stephen. So that's that's how I remember you, because we had a leap, didn't we? So we knew each other through childhood, and then there's been a chunk of time where we haven't seen each other, largely because you live over there, but we have reconnected this last couple of years, which has just been incredible to see you, and thank you for coming to visit and inspiring me in so many ways. And so we'll move on to that, because I have invited you. I've written a book, as you know, and I've invited you to hopefully participate in that and do the introduction for that, and hopefully that's something you'd be interested in. So if I explain that I have ME, if I explain to the viewer that I have ME, which is myalgic encephalomyelitis, but I do always say that if you can say it, you've not got it. And I'll sort of lean into you now and say, what would you like to share that that perhaps happened to you, Stephen?
Right. So it was about 15 years ago now. So I would have been in my early 20s. No, in my mid 30s, and I began to get. I was on YSOP, and I began to get very, very mild symptoms of. I was getting very fatigued, which was not like me. I was a very high energy individual like you, and I began to get very, very tired. And then I was getting shooting pains through my body. It was like electrical zaps, and then these symptoms began to get worse and worse. I got a brain fog. I was getting itchy skin. I was unable to control my temperature. I would get very, very hot. I would be pouring with sweat. I remember in New York in those hot one particular hot summer, I ended up having to get Botox under my arm because it was becoming so embarrassing. I was sweating so much in order to nothing would stop it. No deodorant, nothing, anything. And then I couldn't tolerate cold either. And I started going to different doctors, and they couldn't find what was wrong with me. And the symptoms just got worse and worse until I got to a point where I had to stop work for a fair chunk of time, almost a year. And then I had another 6 months off. I went back to work, and then I had another 6 months off. And I just ground to a halt.
And how old would you be, Stephen, at this time?
I would have been in my late 30s, early 40s.
So late 30s. Obviously, I was 39, so that seems to be quite a popular, I should say, age of this particular type of condition to happen. And do you feel that you know why it happened? Have you got any sort of understanding of your particular journey?
Oh, yeah.
You do?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I do now, but I didn't for many years. I mean, there were 3 or 4 years where I'd say 3 years where I was going to doctor after doctor who was like, well, we can't find what was wrong with you. Or some doctors, there's nothing wrong with you. And then, but I knew there was something extremely wrong with me. But what happens with the medical profession is they treat the person presented before them. They don't talk about the person in the past. And the person before them was, I'd put on like 40 pounds of weight. And because I just had no energy from exercising a lot to no exercise. And yeah, they saw this guy before them, you know, not the guy who just run a triathlon. I mean, I'd run a triathlon just before I got sick.
Right. Well, that's
Half triathlon.
interesting.
Not an Ironman, but a half triathlon. But
No,
still.
but a half triathlon is a lot. So
Yeah,
I want the
yeah.
viewer to understand. That's why I wanted to go back to your childhood, Stephen, because I want the viewer to
Mm,
understand that you're not a shirker. You're not,
mm,
you know,
yeah,
a quiet person who you know, that doesn't do a lot. You are somebody who high energy, even when I knew you in childhood, who
yeah.
continued. You did your law degree, you then went to the BBC. These are all high energy. Then you went to America television, and these are very high demanding positions physically and mentally, because people often think, well, okay, you'll cope with the mental side. No, these, if you overexert the brain physically or mentally in any department, and of course in our careers we did both, entertainment is high achieving results. Would you say, I'm a perfectionist and a people pleaser, that's my personality, would you say that you have those attributes as well, Stephen? Yeah. So often put yourself last in a situation in order to achieve the goal ahead. Would you say that was you? Yeah, I would say that that was you as well. Somebody that always sort of negated your own needs, perhaps health, perhaps before, and that's been your incredible journey that I'm sure you can share as we move through. So, what do you think was the precipice? What happened? Did you physically collapse as I did, or was it just a gradual decline?
Mine was much more gradual.
Okay.
I know. I would go to a different doctor. I remember when I went into the Mayo Clinic, and I was so sick. I went into the Mayo Clinic for
Okay.
a week, and my mum flew over, and I remember I was on a bit of a high when we were heading up to the Mayo Clinic, because I mean, they're one of the best hospitals in the world, and I really thought that they were going to find what was wrong with me.
Oh.
And I went through a week there, and then at the end, they again were like, "We don't know what's wrong with you." And
And
that
what did you
was,
do
I
at the
think that
Mayo, Stephen? Sorry to
was
interrupt. What did you do at the
just,
Mayo Clinic? Was it blood tests or
oh,
psychological
so
tests?
every test,
Okay, because just so
everything.
they
They went through a battery of everything to
right.
get to the bottom of what was wrong with me.
Okay.
And I think coming out of the Mayo Clinic, that was the big low. That was
Oh,
when because by that point, I was barely functional. I, I couldn't get out of bed to visit. There was a point where I had to kind of G myself up to visit the bathroom. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous,
no, I
but I think
understand.
all of us that have suffered with
Mm,
any kind of chronic fatigue as one of our symptoms knows that I'm not being hyperbolic.
yeah.
It was like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta get out of bed. Such was the brain fog, the lack of energy. It's a total system failure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I ended up struggling on, and I went to a hormone doctor, and I met with the hormone doctor. It's nothing to do with infectious disease. I'd been to an infectious disease specialist and nothing came up. And then he asked me, he talked to me for about 10 minutes, and he was very curious. He was one of the few doctors that actually looked at me. He wasn't like tap, 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 tap,
Yeah.
tap, tap. His computer, like a lot of them
Yeah.
are. No disrespect, doctors. I know you're all very very busy. But he looked at me, and it was disconcerting. It made me feel uncomfortable. And then he talked to me about 10 minutes, and he said, have you heard of Lyme disease? I said, no. And he said, have you been tested for it? I presume you've not been tested for it then, if you've not heard from it. I heard of it. I said, I don't know. I said, I've been tested for that many things. I don't
Yeah.
know what. I just
Yeah.
know that they told me that there's nothing wrong with me. He said, well, there's clearly something wrong with you. And he said, I think you're a textbook Lyme. He said, have you had any sort of serious illnesses in the past or in childhood that was a bit odd and unexplained? And I said yes. I said, when I was 10 years old, I was over in Yorkshire, and I would spend summers with my grandparents, and I was outdoors all the time. very rural out there, Kettlewell, Yorkshire. And I was taken sick there, and my temperature went sky high. My neck was really stiff. They brought me over to Preston to see a doctor there, and then they suspected I had viral meningitis, which is very rare. And they said to my parents, they said, we can either test him, which is the lumbar puncture for meningitis, which is very painful for a child to go through, or let him just ride this out. He's fighting it. We're not worried. He's going to pull through this. So they chose not to pull through, but they chose not to get the lumbar puncture, which I think was the right decision. And I recovered from this virus, but it took me a good 6 months to recover. I was not in school for a long time, long period of time. And interestingly, acute Lyme disease looks just like meningitis.
That's interesting.
They're the same
identical symptoms. Yeah. Interesting.
So what the doctor, so they tested me for Lyme. He said, I'm going to test you for Lyme. So they tested me for Lyme, and then I came back positive for Lyme. And I remember when he told me, I just burst into tears. And he said, oh, don't worry. He said, there's so much we can do to help you. And I said, I'm happy. There were tears of joy because I'd spent so much time not knowing what was wrong with me, and I felt a relief because at least I knew what I was dealing with.
Yes.
Because to be suffering every day and not know what was wrong with you, not have the comfort of a doctor, in fact some of them are disbelieving of you, and you feel like you're on trial with them as they go through this, their symptoms, and a lot of doctors, if they can't find it, then there's nothing wrong with you. That moment was a real turning point. I thought, okay, I now know what I'm dealing with. And
how long did it take you to find him, Stephen? How long did you suffer before?
4 years.
4 years. And I'm guessing, because you're in America, financially big losses as well. Is that right?
Huge. Yeah. Although you pay insurance here, you still pay a portion to your treatment. It's called a copay. It's very complicated over here. And then also the subsequent treatments that I did, a lot of them weren't covered on insurance. And so it then cost me, an awful lot of money to then get well again, or on the road to wellness, which when you're in that position, the money just doesn't matter.
And how did you feel in yourself? I mean, did it knock your confidence? Did it knock, because only speaking from my own experience, when you're not believed, for me, that was harder than not being able to walk. That was a harder judgment. And there's no cure. I mean, I was told it was a disease that didn't exist and had no cure. And that in itself was just unbearable. And for me personally, there I was working as an actress, and then suddenly I was being diagnosed as an actress. So you can imagine, or you don't need to imagine, yourself firsthand how difficult that is. So how did that emotionally affect you, Stephen? And did you have support? Obviously, you've got your lovely mum, Carol Pettinger, who's a wonderful lady and a wonderful mum to you as well. But what about other support? Did you have anybody, friends around, or anybody at the time that did or didn't support? How was the journey for you?
Most people were very supportive. I think. No, I had a lot of support. No, I had a lot of support. Yeah. Oh no, I had an awful lot of support. But there's people that aren't supportive, and it's hard for people to understand because Lyme kind of comes and goes. So you're sick on one point, and then the following week you're like okay, and then they look at you and you look okay. I could see the cogs turning in people's heads and looking at you and then asking questions. And a lot of the time I found myself, which I changed, I found myself in conversations where I was justifying myself because they didn't have whatever thoughts. I don't have conversations like that anymore. If somebody doesn't believe me, they don't believe me. I couldn't give
Exactly.
people understand, like if it's
Yeah.
cancer or, but when it's something chronic and it's going on, and then and then they look at you and you can see them thinking the thought bubble, well, they look okay. And,
that's it. That was it. That's it. You look all right, and oh, you look good today. And inside you're bubbling because you, at the time that you're in it, you feel not believed in many ways, and you do feel like a bit of an actor, and that's the hard thing. And for me, obviously, I was bed bound and in a wheelchair, but obviously you had those extremities of symptoms as well. And it's interesting you talk about Lyme's, because Dr. Perrin, who's been looking after myself, he also has connections with Lyme disease and ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, as having an overlapping symptomology, which is interesting because today's description of long COVID also has 100 identical symptoms to ME. So we seem to have a lot of different narratives, different physical descriptions, all with an overlapping symptomology that's, in my opinion, identical almost, but perhaps different causative factors underpinning. But interesting that, that you were highly active, your horse riding, your performance, your directing, etc. That seems to be something that certainly Dr. Perrin, who's a neuroscientist, he talks about that connection between being physically high achievers seem to be the hardest hit with both of these disease states, which is quite interesting. So would you say for yourself, you think that might have played a part in it?
Yeah.
There's
definitely a mental component. I mean, we can't get around it.
Yeah.
There's the physical. I think when we fall prey to a virus or a bacteria or that becomes chronic and we can't clear it from our system, I think it's a number of, it's not a straightforward story as to why. Some people test positive for Lyme and have no symptoms at all. Some people have Lyme and die. I mean, people find out they've got Lyme, it will come up on a blood test, and they don't have any symptoms. So why do certain people, begs the question, why do certain people they're unable to clear you can't clear the bacteria, it's there forever, but their body is able to control the bacteria so that it doesn't take over. And why are somebody's not? And I think it's a complex picture of our biological makeup, but also our mental state as well. And what I would say is, being a perfectionist, being a high achiever, driving yourself is a certain headspace, which is not very conducive to recovery.
And I think in line with that, I think having that attitude in life is not going to be conducive with good health or long-term survival on the planet either. And I think, if I'm right about yourself, I mean, certainly for me, I would wake up at 5 o'clock after just doing a 2-hour gig, for example, carrying heavy PA speakers, and I'm only a little lady, and then just being so independent, then running a children's theatre school by day. So like yourself, working long hours, pushing yourself to the extreme. But then I'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep and write my next show. So when you have that sort of attitude and you're then losing your sleep, of course, it was almost like I couldn't sleep. I was tired but wired, and that was for me something that was quite significant. So I mean, I think I was quite high on tonsillitis medication at one point, so I think I got a lot of high energy from from that, all my dancing in nightclubs at GAY in the West End and having a really good I would Kylie Minogue would leave the podium and I'd jump on. And people said, "What are you taking?" And I'd say, "Water," and show the bottle of water. I didn't drink. I didn't take any other medicine that's not prescribed, let's call it. But I was certainly taking tonsillitis medicine for, 25 years, because I had consistent tonsillitis. So I think I remember you telling me that you also had another infection, was it? Can you remember that particular one? Because we do seem to prelude having lots and lots of infections and sickness. For me personally, there was a heck of a lot, But did you, obviously, you had that at age 10. You talked about meningitis age 10. Was there anything later on that you had? I had glandular fever diagnosed, for example. Did you have anything like that?
Yeah, I had hepatitis. I went
Okay.
yellow,
Okay.
but I didn't. I don't think I tested positive for hepatitis. I was
They
yellow.
just told you
It
that you
was
had it.
around. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
there's something going on with his liver,
Yeah.
which just came and went.
And how old were you,
Um,
Stephen?
I would have been about 14. I was in a production with your brother actually at the time, Oliver. I
Okay.
couldn't actually be in the show. It was with Preston Musical Comedy. But
Right.
I may have had it. I can't remember. I know I was
Mm.
yellow.
Wow.
And so I would have strange episodes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I say I didn't have any symptoms, but I do think about in my 20s, I would have like 2 or 3 days where I would just like crash.
That's
And
interesting.
then I would just come out of it again.
Yeah.
I just like didn't feel well. And I remember I just used to think, well, I've been pushing myself so hard, which is true. Perhaps your body's just like, I need a rest, which is all probably all true. So I didn't give it that much thought.
Yeah.
But I think there were a lot of red flags there that I chose to ignore. I definitely worked when I was feeling the fatigue. I definitely worked way longer than I should have. Where I worked through things. I pushed myself. I should have stopped a lot sooner, but I didn't. But it's interesting you talk about being an actor. It becomes very confusing for us, for those of us with chronic fatigue, because we have to become actors.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Yes, that's
Imagine
exactly
having
it.
feeling like you have flu every day.
Yes.
Nobody wants to hear you've got flu every day,
No.
and you've got a job to do.
Yeah.
And so I think many of us create this persona,
Yeah.
and
And I think
and
perhaps we
we
did.
become,
I think
yeah,
we
we can
did.
be very
We got
adept at
used
this
to
thing.
it. We kind of got used to it.
Yeah,
And every time I was
yeah,
sick, the show must go on, you see. That was my
yes,
methodology. And the same for you on the production side. The show must go on until eventually it can't. And that's where I
yeah,
want to sort of um you
yeah,
know, go into the conclusion of today, because I could talk to you for hours, and I'd love to bring you back onto the podcast, Stephen, because I think what you are sharing with us is something that perhaps in future podcasts we can, maybe discuss and perhaps go a bit
mm,
further into it should new developments come up. But it's so interesting because we are given the doctor's perspective of things, where you've got this disease and that disease and this disease, and we're often not tested for these particular diseases. I certainly wasn't for glandular fever, and as a little child, I was diagnosed with parvovirus that only dogs get, which perhaps explains a lot. But the point is, I didn't know anybody else in my class with it, and it seems strange that I could have a diagnosis without officiating it. So we need to sort of have a look further, I think, and science is always evolving, isn't it, into what is causing these symptoms. And for you personally, what's I admire so much about you is your strength, your courage in the face of adversity to get back on the horse in your personal case and get yourself back up again and inspire others, which is what today's about. This whole podcast venture is to reconnect with people from our childhood, people in the community, people with very similar backdrops, and hopefully align us all together so that we know that we're not alone and that there are other people out there that have gone through this, but also that there is a way forward. And as I say, for you personally, there's so much more I want to talk about with you, but you found holistic approaches. So to just briefly touch on some of the modalities that you use, Stephen, that helped you personally, is there anything that you could tell the viewer that
yeah.
that would inspire them? Obviously, we both agree diet is essential.
Right. Yeah. So once I knew I had Lyme, then I just started to read, research. So I started with my diet.
Yeah,
Nobody had ever mentioned my diet. Isn't that unbelievable? No
yeah,
doctor had really talked about what I was eating. So I overhauled my diet. I was a vegetarian anyway, but I cut gluten, and I tried diet elimination. I tried to pull various things out. I do eat dairy, but I don't eat a lot. I'll eat almond milk. So I reduced the amount of dairy that I ate. I reduced a lot of the gluten. I'm not celiac. It is in my family. It is in a lot of Northern European families, celiac.
Yeah.
But there is some gluten intolerance there. And I found that eliminating gluten or cutting it out as much as I could actually did help the brain fog. And now I actually intermittent fast. So I only eat one meal a day. And
Oh,
that's
wow.
really helped. Yeah, that's really helped with my
Wow.
energy, with nausea, with a lot of symptom control. I didn't try that immediately. That's only been something. I'm always trying different things. I use
Yes.
myself as the guinea pig.
Yeah.
I did cryotherapy. I did lymphatic drainage. I mean, well, you name it, I did it. I can talk about
Yeah.
every
Yes.
pretty much every treatment out there.
You tried absolutely everything.
Yeah, I did. I did do high dose antibiotics
Okay.
initially, which I sort of regret, but I did them.
Okay.
They
Did they
created a
worsen your
lot of problems.
Did they worsen?
Yes,
Okay.
for a period of time, but then I did begin to recover. So about a year later, but I don't think I was prepared to how catastrophic to the body high dose antibiotics can be. I don't think I was prepared for that treatment, and but I did those, but a lot. We were talking about the mental aspects as well. Like I tackled the mental aspect, yoga, meditation,
Yeah, meditation, very good.
controlling my mind, and then also learning to let things go. I would ruminate about things professionally. I don't think I've ever watched a television show where I've watched it go out live and I haven't been like, oh, I changed that. Oh, why did I do that? I changed that.
Yes.
I'm not like never happy. Never. I was never happy. I
Yeah,
was happy.
that's it. It's
Yeah.
never good enough, no matter what. It's never finished. It's never good enough. And that's
Yeah.
lack of self-love, really. So I think that's something that you've
Yeah.
obviously worked on, as I have, and I'm
Mm,
always doing, because it's always progressing forwards, to actually let go and let the reader or of my book, or let the audience of a podcast, or in your day-to-day world, and in you producing your podcast today, let them just see the authentic Stephen. And I think when we let go, we then become much more authentic, much more grounded, much happier and free. I think there's a sense of freedom. Would you agree?
absolutely, I would agree. And I think if we're talking about people and chronic disease, and here's the frightening truth, and the quicker you face it, the better. You're not going to get the answer from one doctor. It's not going to be a magic pill. There's not going to be a magic bullet.
Yeah.
You have to take accountability for your own health.
Yes. You are in charge of
And
you. That's it.
you are in charge of you monitoring how I feel. I find so many people do not think about their health and just hand the agency over. Oh, well, my doctor says. I think it's very curious when people talk about their health and go, so well, my doctor says I can't take that. Well, my doctor's, well, okay, your doctor is one of your advisors, but
Yeah.
actually there's a whole lot more that goes into a decision. And I think had I done just what the doctors told me originally,
Yeah.
I would not have recovered.
Yeah.
I would be probably a drug addict on pain pills that they
Oh,
tried to give me to stop the pain, which was OxyContin, which is a huge lawsuit over now because it's addictive. There are so many things. I don't know. And so
yeah.
the doctors were valuable, certainly, and certainly some doctors were extremely valuable. The doctor that diagnosed me, for example, the hormone specialist,
Yes. He was on the money there.
many
Yeah.
doctors, but you have to take accountability for your own health. And I
Yes.
think why I enjoy the fact that you are launching this channel is that's helping people get that message and
Yeah.
start their journey of researching and listening. And I think also one of the awful things about being chronically sick is you feel very isolated.
Yes. Yeah, especially in the darkest times. And I was in blackout curtains with ear defenders, and that was the severity level. And I remember just looking up and praying and saying, please, somebody save me, and I'll spend the rest of my life, because I was dying, and I knew I was as well in my personal case, but I knew that I wasn't going to survive. And as you quite rightly said, luckily we both have a very positive outlook on life. I think having a huge positive outlook, even in the darkest of times. And somebody said to me, fake it till you make it, which was a very wise thing. So as much as both of us were always happy smilers, in our outward sort of perhaps slightly inauthentic, because nobody smiles all the time, but we managed to keep that appearance up. What's good now is I'm able to show all feelings and emotions and release that, and I think there's an enormous freedom, as I say, in that. So we will absolutely talk again, Stephen. As I said, there's so much more that we can cover, and some of your modalities we can go into at greater length.
Yeah.
And you know,
I've done everything. You want any opinion on my treatment? I'll go, oh, I've done that.
Exactly. So you can
I've done that.
Yeah, and then you can give insight as to what you felt was worthy, and what things perhaps may not be conducive. But a lot of it is independence, a lot of it is self-motivation, and a lot of modalities are perseverance and committing to whatever it is you're doing, and committing to health in whatever way and shape that helps you personally. So what positive end sentence or quote could you share with the audience today, Stephen, to end on a high? And we will certainly come back and rejoin you, that might inspire others.
Okay, I think if you're in a stage where you're in the depths of chronic illness, you're struggling in terms of recovery, in terms of your recovery, in terms of your relationships, that dark place that you talked about. I think that the main thing to think at that point is my health is number one.
Yeah.
And any situation that you find yourself in, you have to just go back to, does this help me get well? Every decision needs to center around this.
Yeah.
Whether it be a relationship, somebody in your life, you have to make some brutal decisions. Is this person helpful for me in terms of my recovery? And if they're not, is my job helpful for me in terms of my recovery?
Yes.
And and then once you get into that mindset, you need to be in that mindset for a few years, and you will climb your way out. I promise you.
So you're saying put yourself first. Put yourself first.
Number one.
And I matter most. Because one thing that aligns us all is that we have never mattered. Certainly for me, I didn't matter enough, and I didn't think about my health enough. You could have peeled me off the ceiling. I was so excitable and active, and I'm sure perhaps the same for yourself. But what you're saying is, when you transcend and you learn from it, so it's been a positive learning opportunity that not everybody gets. Would you agree? And do you feel more grateful for being alive? Because I certainly do. As much as I'm, still quite poorly, I'm just so grateful that I've got this second opportunity at life. That's how I feel.
100%. No, I feel the same. And I think it's the place that you need to get to, where you cross that bridge where the illness is something that happened to you, and it's unfortunate and regrettable to, wow, I'm almost glad that happened to me, because I'm a better, richer, more empathetic, understanding person because of it. And really, these days, it really doesn't take a lot to make me happy. I'm happier if I wake up out of bed and I've got energy and I feel good and I feel clear. That's as happy as I can get.
That's incredible. Well, Stephen, you are an inspiration to all. It's been an absolute joy speaking to you today.
Me too.
Thank you for doing the introduction to my book, which will be imminently produced. And I hope to touch base with you about that later. And certainly thank you for inspiring everybody out there who's got a diagnosis of Lyme disease. Is there any
anybody with chronic illness?
Anybody with any chronic illness?
We're all a community. It doesn't matter whether it's Lyme, it's all our symptoms cross over.
Yeah.
And also we experience the same life of disbelief, going from doctor to doctor, the mind games.
Yes.
It's such a complicated picture. We all have the same story. And I think the more that we share stories, it doesn't matter whether it's from Lyme or it's from MS, or the more that we share those stories, I think, as a community, because the chronically ill are ignored.
Yes.
You know, our medical system's great at, if you're in an accident, putting you together. If there's a cancer in, but it's an illness that rumbles on and on with difficult symptoms, we are abandoned, essentially.
Misunderstood. Misunderstood. Yeah,
misunderstood. But I guess I say abandoned. We're not abandoned literally, but I think many of us feel abandoned.
Yes, and we feel alone. And as you say, you found healing modalities. And as I say, we will come back, because I think that's something that the audience would love to hear a little bit more about. And it's been a pleasure getting to know your past, your childhood, a little bit more about things I didn't know. And it's been an absolute joy. And so, Stephen Pettinger, thank you very much for joining me with Catherine Vandome and me. And I look forward to bringing you back at some point in the future. God bless. Thanks again.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I wish you well with your new ventures.
Thanks so much, Stephen.
You're doing great work. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you. Thanks again. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.